Okay, we all made it back. Excellent.
Most of us.
Most of us. That's fine. We've started a super interesting conversation. I look forward to hearing what Rik has to add to it. Rik Smit is a lecturer at the Center for Media and Journalism Studies at the University of Groningen, which means he got up very early this morning. And fun side note, he has not only a bachelor but also a master in American Studies, which means he probably knows more about the United States than I do. And he has an additional master in journalism, also from the University of Groningen, where he now teaches and where he has recently completed his dissertation, which focuses on social media and memory. Please welcome Rik Smit.
Thank you so much. Well, my knowledge stops at 2010, and then,
That's better that way.
I guess. Welcome everybody. I was very excited to hear the first two talks, and I'm sure there's some overlap. From the start, I want to say that my use of the word platform is a little bit different than, for example, Piet Bakker's. I see platforms as digital infrastructures. So YouTube or Facebook or Wikipedia are platforms. So that's from the start. So what I want to do quickly today is first revisit this idea of memory work, and I think without saying it, you already used it, this idea of memory work. And I'm a researcher, I want to pose some research questions that will guide the rest of this talk. Then I want to discuss the first case study, which is also published in New Media and Society 2 years ago, Witnessing a New Memory Ecology, Memory Work and the Syrian Conflict on YouTube. Second case study, Activating the Past in the Ferguson Protests, got published 2 days ago in New Media and Society, so they're all open access, you can find them. This is an American case study, I guess. And then a more international case study is on the limits of an open past, memory work on Wikipedia, and Downing on Flight, NH17. And then I want to briefly discuss what this all means in terms of conclusion when platform politics are interwoven with memory politics. So, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about memory work, and you can see we already covered it. But also diary writing, and also national television can do memory work. We're in a building full of professional memory workers. And basically, what I think is that memory work is all about the transfer and reconstruction of knowledge and experience of the past in the present and into the future. So basically the transfer of knowledge and experience. So it ranges from very individual type of memory work, you can say the diary writing, to more collective forms of it, like national TV does, and more private to the more public. Right? You keep your diary mostly to yourself, whereas television broadcasts ideas about the past. And it always occurs through and by specific practices, technologies, and cultural forms, I would say. So the cave painting can be seen as a particular type of practice, right? The prehistorians, they basically drew by hand. It's also a specific type of technology, involves specific technologies like color and all that. And it's a specific cultural form, right? It's an object you can look at and still survives today. And often all these different types of memory work have specific goals. They can be very political. So I'm going to take this idea of memory work and transport it into our time and the time of social media. So a couple of research questions guided my own research in my PhD dissertation, which I just finished, so I'm still very tired of it. But I'm happy to present it here. So how do different social actors use platforms for digital memory work, and concurrently what role do platforms themselves play in this? I see human and non-human agents as working together in producing knowledge and memory. How are power and agency negotiated and redistributed memory work on platforms? So basically, who has the power to produce an effect? Piet Bakker already talked about design in certain platforms, and I would say, I hope to have this conversation later also, what role affordances have in this. And affordances are basically the imagined uses of objects or material artifacts by people. So if you see it, yes, it invites you to sit on it, right? Or you can pick it up and throw it, use it as a weapon, but it's designed for a particular use. But people make meaning actually of the object and technologies they encounter. They appropriate them. So that's why I asked the question. I think it's a back and forth movement between design and between uses. All right, and ultimately the question: why are certain versions of the past represented and transferred into the future on and by platforms? Okay, so the 3 case studies in the back of your mind. Case 1, quite a horrific case study. I spent a lot of time on YouTube and actually looking at videos coming from Syria. And basically figuring out what videos survive, what videos are searchable, what videos actually are represented on YouTube. What is the visible archive of YouTube? In this particular case, I focused on a chemical weapons attack on August 21st, 2013 in the neighborhood of Ghouta. It was a horrific case of chemical weapons use, and it's still debated whether or not chemical weapons were used, but I'm quite convinced there were, and so is the UN. There were around, now we know that around 1,200 people were killed, and mainly children. So I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots that might be a little bit horrific for you, so I want to say that before. What is important is that this attack happened just before a UN inspection mission of Damascus, and actually the use of specific chemical weapons in the region. And journalists were not present in this particular instance. So that makes it very interesting for me to investigate what Stuart Allen has called citizen witnessing. Basically the ability of all of us to record and share with the world things we see around us. And basically this happens within what another guy, Chadwick, has called a hybrid media system, where old media live next to a new media and actually interact and use each other all the time. What you see is that on a TV you can have YouTube where you can actually see people recording an attack or the aftermath of an attack. It's kind of familiar, I think. Well, what actually happens when these videos enter YouTube? We all think about, so we have this new ability of citizen witnessing enabled by new technology, but what does actually survive within the archive? I think that one way to look at it is through the social technical curating practice of you and me, of users of YouTube. I think they're highly political because they arrange what you see in the archive. So if you search for a particular term, there are curators, there are archivists in the room, I hope. But basically YouTube works in the same way. They arrange your archive, they show what is in there, they anticipate search behavior, and they guide ultimately interpretation of the videos you see through, for example, titles, descriptions, and the tags that are given. So they structure ultimately the archive and partly determine whose voices are heard in that archive. And I want to make a clear distinction here between the actual uploaders of the videos and the makers of the videos, because it's an important distinction. Because more often than not, the makers of the video are not actually the ones who upload the most popular videos in YouTube. Ultimately, I think the archive is never static or stable. It constantly changes, especially when you think about a digital archive like YouTube. And I've had heated debates with archivists about calling YouTube an archive, but I hope that there will be an archivist in here in which I can extend that debate. Okay, so which content does actually show when you? I will spare you the methodological details of the study, but we actually used a set of predetermined search categories, search words to find out which videos actually pop up. But yeah, mainly you see very technical videos of actually proving that the chemical weapons attack happened. But also you see lots of the consequences of it, which in this case are dead children. So I'll quickly skip that because it's not the most nice to look at. But whose videos are they? How are they used? Well, by far the most are actually uploaded by legacy media, and they call this as a kind of a container term, legacy media. The big media. Think about CNN. Think about New York Times. Think about those big media that upload videos. And actually, they remix all the witness videos they found, right? And they put it into a new story. You can see that web native media are quite active in it, and they're actually not the biggest uploader group, but they are by far the most visible. So they know how the web works, they know how to curate, and that's why they pop up in the search articles. And you see about a little bit less than 1/3 is actually the citizen witnesses themselves. But you can see that by far the most videos are actually remixed and uploaded not in the raw, unmediated form, but actually they have a layer, interpretive layer over them. Well, how are they tagged? It's also interesting to see is by far descriptors are actually important for YouTube. So place is by far the most important tag you can give, because that's where people find it. You can also see the weapon type, political issue are pretty big. And of course, people title and describe them. So, for example, here, hundreds of victims by chemical weapons in eastern Ghouta. That works well. A father finds his children among the dead. All this type of very highly effective titling and describing is very popular. Well, now we have all this kind of similar content, because it is kind of similar content. It shows either that people are in pain or the technical details of what happens when your body is hit by a chemical weapons attack. But actually, if you look at how these videos are all framed, this happens in a very different way. A huge frame is the questioning frame, for example. Did a chemical weapons actually occur? Then the second frame I found was an accusatory frame, so basically accusing a party of the attack. And then a moral frame, which kind of morally judges the attack. But this says something about how actually particular knowledge and experience of the event gets transported into the future. So if a popular archive like YouTube is full with videos, but the most popular ones that survive time are actually questioning whether or not it happened, it's kind of problematic, I think. Right. And basically, I think these frames can set the agenda for the future, because we know that special groups, for example, investigating this particular chemical weapons attack, use social media for their research. They actually pool all as much as possible and what's actually filmed about it. And this is something you can call mediated perspective memory, which is basically setting the agenda for the future. This is a great article for you to read if you're interested in it. It's in the Wide Web. So basically, we ask all the new questions about our new archives. Whose representations actually dominate in it? We're now in a classic kind of archive, audiovisual archive, which certain representations are more dominant than others. But how do specific agents now, this whole field of archiving is opened up to all of us, how do specific agents of memory influence the shape of it? Important question. And actually, how do the platforms themselves influence these shifting dynamics? What can you do with it? Right. Second case study. It's about this. Does somebody of you know who Mike Brown was, or Michael Brown? Does it ring a bell? Remember that? He was the black teenage kid, 19 years old, who was shot dead by a white police officer in Ferguson. Kind of inspired the riots. And when I saw that, I thought, whoa, there's something going to happen. People are going online. So I started searching for pages that actually were about this shooting. And one of the first ones I stumbled upon was hashtag Justice for Mike Brown. And because I'm interested in like effective interactions with the web, like how people actually emotionally invest in reporting on these things, I stumbled upon this and I saw, wait, here a lot of memory work is happening. People are actually documenting various versions of the shooting. They are very much emotionally involved in sharing their opinions and actually their feelings about it. So I started to compile a database of this page. I gathered and selected many different, like over 5,000 comments and replies, and started to actually sift through them. What is happening on there? And what I found is basically 4 types of memory work, which I see. For example, you can have the memory work that revolves around Michael Brown's identity, which is very much about how do we remember him as an individual. You can focus on the facticity of the case, what actually occurred on that moment of time. You can focus on the protest identity that later emerged, right? So we got to form some kind of cohesive group for political action. And then I found a frame that's very much a systematic injustice. So it's kind of a continuation of past injustices against African Americans. This is, for example, this is a clear example of these are examples of the identity of Michael Brown, for example. You have his old high school portrait, but it's also opposed to the surveillance video that was used in many news reports. This one focuses on creating recognizable symbols, the hands up gesture, created some kind of symbolic marker for the group to actually do. You know, it's an embodied practice. And T-shirts were sold on the page, doing that. It kind of generated this collective feeling. Systematic injustice. Right? I love this picture. It says, "Look how far we've come. The pictures are in color now." Basically, nothing changed in American society. A white opinions bingo of all the arguments that are used on the page. If you're white, you respond particularly in this way. And a lot of iconic imagery actually used. The Black Panthers, but also Martin Luther King. So I would say that memory work functions as a particular kind of discursive practice that connects, your personal life world, your personal action frames, and provides the building blocks of collective identity formation. So it's kind of a way we can connect to a broader movement. But it simultaneously leads to a dynamic in which the complexities of the issues are transformed into a simpler and more tangible narrative, right? So if you say that it is part of systematic injustice, nothing has changed. You kind of gloss over all the progress that has been made. And I would say that the iconicity and visibility of images now not only has to do with what elites think what iconic images are, but actually also with algorithmic and platform-specific issues. Like, for example, if you click on something, you like something, you share something, it becomes more visible, and thus it will kind of transport itself to the future. Last case study about MH17. I think most of you are familiar with this. It was a huge national event in the Netherlands. And what I did is I studied the Wikipedia page, the English Wikipedia page on the topic. And if you go to Wikipedia, you can also click on the archive button, basically. So it shows all the discussions that were held about the lemma, that the encyclopedic entry you actually find when you search for something. And it gives a very interesting insight in how people actually construct collectively a representation like a wiki. And this has everything to do with the hierarchical structure of Wikipedia. Different permission levels are given to particular user groups. So, for example, if you are entering Wikipedia for the first time, you'll probably be an unregistered user or a new user, and your only task and rights are editing. But once you move up the ladder, you're given more rights to do stuff in Wikipedia. And also you get more social power over others, more social influence. You can say, well, you are right, you are wrong. And that ultimately determines the shape of a wiki. It's quite interesting procedure when you look at what's going on behind the scenes of Wikipedia. Wikipedians give each other badges, they give each other rewards for their work, and thereby their own standing in the community decreases. So what I did is I dove into this archive talk pages, and there's many archives. One archive has like 40, 50 A4s of text, so you can imagine it's quite a lot of text. But I tried to systematically go through it and see what actually is in there, and actually what type of discourses you can find in it. A very important one, and they're all reminiscent of journalism, basically, and science, very modernistic kind of approaches to how you write a wiki. One is about objectivity and neutrality. For example, here's an example of the word, the use of the word terrorist in the article. So you kind of get insight into the editorial process behind a wiki. Yeah. Second one is on reliability and verifiability, like how much worth do sources have? Right? What can we use in it and what not? What can we dub a fringe theory? Fringing is a technical issue, but it's basically that something is conspiracy theory, is not dominantly held as true. You know? So if you want to investigate the post-truth society on Wikipedia, very good platform for it, actually. And then debates on technological access and authority. As you grow you advance in the hierarchy of Wikipedia, you're given also the right to use bots, for example. You can implement bots and you can run them. And there were actually a lot of debates on it about the use of Russian bots in the MH17 wiki. There were at some point there were multiple bots used to actually hinder editing. This could be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. For example, if you are a Russian troll, you just change the article to favor Russian perspectives. You can use a bot to prevent others from editing. And if you're interested in it, I'll be happy to talk about it because it's a lot to talk about now. But what I think is happening is on YouTube, and I think a lot on other platforms as well. From the human perspective of things, we go from crowds to in-crowds when it comes to. You have new hierarchies that emerge on these platforms of people that have access to technological tools to change things, but also the social power to actually influence each other. They are what I call new elites in memory work. Right. So this idea of collective intelligence or collective memory forming and shaping, that actually doesn't happen on these platforms. Very small group that actually determines what we see and what we get. Yeah. What happens actually when platform politics are interwoven with memory politics? Well, this is an extreme case of it. Just recently, the New York Times reported on this, that YouTube removed videos showing atrocities in Syria. Imagine the consequences. There's lots of committees, especially from the UN, that work with this material, and all of a sudden the material they use is gone. But of course they can make backups, they have the financial resources and technological capabilities to do so. But you have also many other journalists or citizen journalists or human rights advocates who don't have that possibility.
What was YouTube's reason?
When I explained that, it was an automated procedure. So it was an algorithm that was set loose on their content, and actually it filtered out things they deemed not violent or not inappropriate. So this touches upon all these ethical issues about writing code for these type of things. Right. So what I would say, what I conclude with, is that platforms themselves we should take seriously now in the shaping of not only our present but also our past and futures. They are important and complex actors in memory work because they keep and they transfer and shape and interpret and represent not only our collective but also our individual past. Think about, for example, the Facebook feature, what you did like 3 years ago, the anniversaries and all that. It's an automated kind of procedure, right? So I would say that memory work has been redistributed. It doesn't mean that new media actors don't, old media actors don't play an important role in it anymore. On the contrary, a lot of old media use social media in a very strategic way. They know how to do it. That's also something that my research has shown. But ultimately, what I think we have to keep in mind is that we hand over some sense of control over our futures. These platforms, these hugely commercial platforms, I have to say, not in the case of Wikipedia, but still Wikipedia is very much interconnected with the rest of the web. Google just did a huge donation to Wikipedia, for example, right, because it fills search engines. But so there's an issue of trust and loss of control, I would say. So that was the end of the presentation.
Okay, we've got a few minutes for questions. If anyone's got one off the top of their head, now's your chance.
I was thinking, how do you envision?
Who are you and
Oh, sorry. I'm Mihai. I studied arts. Basically, I'm from an art background. And anything else you want to know, Tess?
No, this is good.
And I was wondering, how do you envision, let's say, or maybe you don't envision, a sort of education for an audience or a sort of process through which people become more aware of these pitfalls, let's call them, of new media and...
media literacy from the primary school onward. Yeah, absolutely. But that's already occurring, I think. But most of these media actually developed in a time that, or in a generation that didn't have that kind of media literacy. The only media literacy they got was by watching MTV. Creating awareness of how these, especially, you don't have to know how an algorithm works, but to get a sense of what it does, right? I think that is an important thing. For example, what you type into Google is not arbitrary, or what shows up in Google is not arbitrary. It's actually there's a process behind it. I think that is important.
Yeah.
I'm Johan and I work in this building.
Yeah. Great.
So I think your third point to me is also a call to action.
Yes, absolutely.
For institutional archives to make sure that we keep a close watch on what is distributed where and take also the future in our own hands. Because I'm thinking about, for instance, the Internet Archive and their web archive and the web video that we capture from the web. So I was wondering if you can comment on that, and also in light with your claim that YouTube as an archive?
Yeah. Okay, so let me first start that I don't think YouTube as an organization is filled with bad guys. So I do think that's one entry point. I think there's lots of debate within YouTube on what to keep and what not to keep. But of course they don't have the kind of institutional how do you say that, reputation that this institution has, for example. The second question, I hope I wish I could answer it already, but is where do you start? Where do you start by? Should we collect everything, or should we collect like specific cases, or should we collect around topics, or where do you start with this whole new media landscape? Like, how do you Internet Archive those special cases? I'm not quite aware of what Beeld en Geluid does, but it's really hard. But yeah, I wish I had the answer.
Yeah, because basically Google is into the advertising business, and they are using search algorithms to sell advertising.
Absolutely.
So trusting our past and present to platforms, well, that makes me very nervous. But anyway, that's just my private.
No, it makes me nervous too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially when you do research in them, you can actually see what is actually gone or deleted, or the content that survives has a particular political dimension to it as well.
Have you seen actually advertising within Syrian videos?
Yeah,
that's really
very weird. Yes, absolutely.
What is advertising?
I'm not sure if it. Yeah, that was a very strange experience when you research all this horrific stuff.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you see advertising. I don't know. No, but you definitely would have like I don't want to use like a filter for against advertising, because this is part of the experience of researching archive, right? And if it's commercial archive, you should experience it as a commercial thing. So I would see like here, you would see like popping up like I bought a new bed, like there's a new bed on there, or yeah, I don't know by heart what type of commercials there were, but that would be there are absolutely. It is a commercial platform, so to make money. Yeah. Or after this video, you will see the.
Daan Odijk, I'm the next speaker, so I'll get into it later on. I was wondering how you archive your own research. Because all the YouTube videos might go down, and do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. Sometimes basic download. But also, especially in the beginning, when I started collecting all this stuff, I made it an archive within YouTube itself. But then, of course, videos get deleted. Yeah, so I had to download them all by hand. I know there's some automated ways to do it, and I would definitely do that in the future because it saves a lot of time. But for example, Facebook material is notoriously hard to download automatically. I tried with FacePager. I don't know if you know it, or I think it's called NetFizz. So all these tools, and they're all open source. You can use them. But in the case of this Facebook page, I had this because the new loading system of the Facebook page was just introduced, that you had to scroll down in order to get the whole page. So I scrolled down for 50 minutes. Had the whole page and downloaded it that way, but it's notoriously hard to get access to all this stuff and save it. Yeah, and Wikipedia is very easy. Yeah, it's quite easy to do. Yeah.
But wouldn't it be a great service if YouTube would allow you to have your own archive, and if it's put in your archive, that it will stay there?
Yeah, that's the first question. Yeah, they solved that, right? You can create your own archives, right? Watch later, or you can create watch lists. But the second part, they can't guarantee that certain material stays there. They don't guarantee it.
Because it's the makers or the uploaders that delete them?
Yeah, the uploaders can delete them. You can also, as somebody who sees, hey, that's my material, you can write to YouTube, remove that, or YouTube itself can do it. You can delete, as in the case of the deletion of a couple of thousand videos, Syria. But it's a hugely conservative company too, right? It's very wary of nudity, of aggression, and all of that. It can be good, but in the case of atrocity, it's quite problematic.
Is Facebook Live videos, like, I feel like they're becoming more common in these kind of instances of things happening.
Definitely.
I'm just curious if that makes a difference. Like, what's the difference between using Facebook or YouTube or?
Yeah, this experience of liveness. Yeah, it is interesting because there's on Facebook especially the present is favored. Right? The present is very much favored. So where YouTube is a kind of a repository, Facebook is all about live.
Yeah, now.
So important, and it kind of flattens the historical narrative too. So if you study like how the past is actually represented on Facebook, it becomes very one-dimensional. You have only a couple of frames. You have only a couple of type of representations. Yeah. So and that's how the technology actually works. It favors the new, right? And thereby you experience the platform differently. Yeah. More questions?
Any other questions, comments?
What search engine do you use when you're not preoccupied about the? I go for DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, I tried that, but it's sometimes it works, and sometimes it's really it's terrible. Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. But that's the problem. That's really the problem because Google is the gateway to the web, and Facebook wants to become the gateway to the web. They want to keep you in their browser environment all the time, and then track. Because it's all about advertising, right? So it's all about accumulating data about you. Yeah.
Really briefly about what you were saying about media education. Isn't one of your projects with this woman who designed this book, this Choose Your Own Adventure style thing? I don't know if you wanted to briefly mention that because it might be interesting for people to look for it.
Yeah, the project is called Journey to Digital Literacy, and it's a project by Gwendolyn Rocher, and we kind of collaborate with her in developing like a little guidebook where it's like an adventure book that you go through the book and then choose the choice. Like, what if someone send you a random link? How would you respond to it? Okay, if you choose A, go to page this and this.
Yeah, it's like a multiple choice kind of what is like constant book.
Yeah,
like really creates awareness around this.
Yeah, just an easy way for you to test like how well you deal with the digital environment, but in the physical form.
Yeah. And is this book published? What's happening with it?
It's been published, but it's still in a small amount. Okay. But you can order it online. You can go to our website, and we have like the link to her projects, and you can order it from her website. Yeah.
It's just interesting to see different people's approaches to solving this problem of media, lack of media literacy. Yeah. Cool. Okay, we're gonna move on unless there's another question. No. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Rik.